Oregon's schedule in 2024 did turn out to be one of the easier schedules, I would say, in the Big Ten. I think it definitely helped them to get to that 12-0 mark in the regular season and get to the Big Ten championship. Of course, they did play Ohio State, but they avoided, at least in the regular season, they avoided Penn State. They avoided Indiana. Of course, who knew Indiana was even going to be that good? We thought, having to play Michigan was going to be a tougher game. But yeah, it didn't go exactly like we expected. Before we get to we'll break down the schedule. Let's just look at the whole thing here. So this is the full schedule here, starting with Montana State, ending with Washington. But yeah, let's get into the breakdown here, starting with the non-conference. They will play Montana State, Oklahoma State, and Oregon State. So you're playing, Oklahoma State, who is a Power 4 team. Not good last year, but with Mike Gundy, you never know. They could turn things around. That could be somewhat of a game. We'll see. Again, I don't know how good Oklahoma State's really going to be at this point. Oregon State, rivalry game, a team that was in the Power 4 or in the Power 5 when there was Power 5, of course, now in the Pac 2 or whatever you want to call it. So that, you do have two pretty decent programs there, but let's be honest, those should be pretty easy wins for this Oregon football team. So let's go to the home and away now. You look at the home schedule. All three non-conference games are at home. They will get Indiana, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and USC at home. So you like the home schedule here. You feel good about those games. Now, Indiana, that's an interesting one. I don't know if this Indiana team is going to be able to repeat what they did last year or if they will kind of fall off. So, yeah, that's an interesting game there. But yeah, Wisconsin, Minnesota, USC, you really like Oregon's chances at home in those games. Really, it would be a pretty big disappointment if this team loses a game at home. You look at the road schedule, though, it's not horrible. You've got Northwestern on the road. They, should be a fairly easy win for this Oregon team. Penn State on the road is going to be tough, though. That is going to be a very difficult game. Penn State might be one of the top two teams in the country in 2025. So that's a really, really tough game. In fact, if I'm looking at the Big Ten, the game that I don't want to have to play is on the road at Penn State because it might be the best team in the Big Ten, plus it's on the road. So that's going to be a really tough one. Rutgers on the road. And then you've got Iowa. That's always a tough place to play. I don't really expect Iowa to be great next year, but, they're usually a solid team. And again, playing on the road, that one could be a little bit tricky. And Washington on the road, that one could be a little bit tricky as well. So I see 3 road games that could be a challenge. And again, I feel pretty good about the home schedule. You look at the changes from last year. So they removed Illinois, Maryland, Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, Purdue, and UCLA. So it's a much different schedule in the Big Ten. Yeah, losing Ohio State, Michigan, Illinois. You like that if you're an Oregon fan. Illinois has a chance to be pretty good this year. And then you look at who they add. Again, how good will Indiana be? How good will Iowa be? That's kind of tough. Minnesota could be a solid team. You add Penn State and USC. So, yeah, Penn State's the real, I would say, the only real tough addition to the schedule there. I think it probably is pretty similar to what they had last year in terms of difficulty overall. So let's go game by game. First, this is how their schedule stacks up in the Big Ten with the other teams in the Big Ten based off of conference records from last season. So you see Oregon's opponents, they did have a 54% win percentage last season. They were 44-37. So, that's pretty good. That's pretty solid. Again, where does Indiana land this year? If they're as good as they were last year, this is a tough conference schedule. If Indiana drops off, I don't think the conference schedule is all that tough for Oregon. But it is, again, based off of a winning percentage from last season, it is one of the tougher conference schedules in the Big Ten. All right, so now we're going to go game by game. Starting with Montana State on August 30th. Then they'll play Oklahoma State on September 6th. Then it's on the road at Northwestern September 13th. Home for Oregon State on September 20th. And then on the road at Penn State. So you look at those first 5 games, I would say, is Oregon State a trap game here? Because you've got Northwestern and Penn State both on the road before and after. It's a rivalry game, and it's going to be at home, so I wouldn't worry too much about that game if I'm an Oregon fan. It's going to be all about Penn State. That's going to be a massive showdown there on September 27th. On the road, Happy Valley, That one is going to be one of the games, I think, of the season. They get a bye week after that, so you get to recover after traveling out to Penn State, come back home for Indiana. Could be a tough game. Again, that's one that it's hard to really judge right now. I just don't know how good this Indiana team is going to be. You've got Rutgers on the road October 18th, and then Wisconsin at home. So they do have some travel here, going from a home game, then all the way out west to Rutgers, and then back home for a game against Wisconsin. If you wonder about the travel there, will it play any impact? I don't know. It's hard to say. We did see last year a lot of teams lost when they had to travel across multiple time zones. So I would say, Rutgers maybe is a trap game. I just don't know how good that team's going to be. So they get their next bye week after that. So they're going to play 5 games, then they get 3 games, and then they'll have the final stretch here with these final 4 games after their last bye week. Again, all the teams get 2 bye weeks this year. You've got Iowa on the road. That one could be tough, but again, getting a bye week before that road game will definitely help. Then it's back home for Minnesota and USC. Minnesota on the 15th, USC on the 22nd, and then on the road at Washington on November 29th. So after that second bye week, they don't have to travel too much. I mean, Iowa is the furthest game. Washington, of course, not too far away. And you've got Minnesota and USC at home. So, yeah, I look at that Penn State game. That's the game that I circle. That one is going to be a tough one for sure. You look at Iowa and Washington on the road. Could be tricky games. And then again, how good is Indiana going to be? That's a big question mark there. But I think this schedule, I think overall it does set up pretty well for Oregon in 2025.